Hi, everyone. So, here we are um, to begin the Holy Week series from the Triumphal Entry, which we did yesterday at church. We start at verse 12 of chapter 21 of Matthew's Gospel and move on through. Now, the first section is about Jesus entering and cleansing the temple. The key phrase here that Jesus quotes is, "It is written, my house shall be a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers." They are doing two things at the same time. One is that they are changing money from Roman money into the temple currency, and that has multiple levels of problems for Jews as well as good faith practice. But also the simple fact that this place is a place reserved for prayer, and they've turned it into a place for profit. And the profit, the increase that we are to know in the temple or church sanctuary is from our connection with God, not from increase in finances. And so Jesus just really, really lays it on. From that passage, he goes out to Bethany, spends the night, and then returns. And we have the story of the fig tree. And Jesus comes up to it, and he's hungry, and there's no fruit on it. And he curses it. "May no one ever eat from you again." And the disciples are amazed. And he tells them, if you ask in faith, you will receive. The parable of this fig tree, though, is that this fig tree represents Jerusalem. It represents the leaders of the Jewish faith at that time, that there is no fruit. And so he's saying, may no one ever eat of you again, because there is no fruit there. And then he moves into the temple, and he starts to begin to teach, and he's asked questions as to what authority he has. And this is purely a logistical strike at him, and he returns the question with another question: whose authority, or where did John come from? The baptism of John, did it come from heaven or was it human? And they are afraid to say that it's human because of the crowds, because everyone thinks that John was a prophet. And they won't say that it's heavenly in its origin, because then he'll say, why didn't you listen to John? And so they say, we don't know. But then after that, and Jesus says, neither then will I tell you. It's not that he doesn't know, it's I won't tell you because you aren't telling me what you really believe. And then he starts telling a number of stories. The first is the story, I don't know if you can hear the rain, but it's raining here. The story of a man with two sons. One, he says, go and work in the vineyard, and he says, no, I'm not going to do it. And then he calls the second, and the second says, I'll go, and he doesn't. But the first son goes and actually does the work. And he says, which of these did the will of the Father? And the leaders answer, the first. And he says, truly I tell you, the tax collectors and prostitutes are going into the kingdom of God ahead of you. For John came to you in the way of righteousness, and you did not believe him, but the tax collectors and prostitutes believed him. And even after you saw it, you did not change your minds. And so he further answers the question, even though they don't want to hear this answer. John's authority is from heaven, and he is implying that his authority is also from heaven. And he goes on. There was a landowner, starting verse 33 and following to the end of the chapter, and this amazing story about a landowner who has a vineyard, and he has tenants who are watching over it, but they refuse to ever return produce, and so they they seize the landowner's slaves. They beat one, they kill another, and stone another, and then he sends other slaves are treated poorly. Finally, he sends his son. He thinks they'll respect my son, and they kill the heir, thinking that they will get the inheritance. And Jesus says, "Now, when the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those tenants?" And the leaders respond, "He will put those poor wretches to a miserable death and lease the vineyard to other tenants who will give him the produce at the harvest time." How ironic it is that they are absolutely correct, and God is making a way for something new to happen. Jesus is going to, through the cross and the resurrection, provide a completely new thing that none of the leaders ever expected. And again, the chief priests and the Pharisees, verse 45, realized that he was speaking about them. They wanted to arrest him, but they feared the crowds because they regarded him as a prophet. So, one of the key themes here is that Jesus and John are considered prophets, those who speak for God. I spoke about this on my sermon on Sunday, and this is an important theme here in Matthew's gospel, that Jesus speaks with the authority of God, and at the same time, we're setting up this sense, this first day of Holy Week, that something new is coming that is to replace a failing, fruitless process. And something for us to consider, something for us to think about. How fruitful are we? And I don't mean fruitful in terms of numbers, in terms of membership, in terms of finances. I mean, how fruitful are our lives in terms of revealing the love of God? How fruitful are we in showing God's grace to others? How much care do we provide for others? Compassion and grace. Those, my friends, are the fruit that God is looking for. Are we people of justice? Do we love mercy? And do we walk humbly with God? As followers of Jesus, this is the fruit that we are to be looking for. And the question for us this first day of Holy Week is, what fruit do our lives and our hearts reveal about us? Blessings and peace. Amen.